Hello, everyone. Today is 7th June, it's a Monday, and welcome all and thank you for watching my Rethink and Develop 100 Days Self Created Internship. Uh, R&D 100 Days starts with rethinking, followed by um, development, as you know. And today is day 18, which means that it is a rethink day about a value system. And last week and the week before, we talked about the inheritance. So, can you guess what is the sequel to inheritance? What can follow up with inheritance? The answer is responsibility, right? The responsibility is the sequence, is a sequel and the continuation of inheritance. Once you accept the concept um, of it, of inheritance, right? The most basic component and step to inheritance is responsibility, as I have found out and as I will tell you guys about my findings today. If we feel that we don't have this responsibility, then we cannot have concern for the society or the inheritance of the things in society, right? Um, Maybe you have a tough time figuring out what is the relationship between responsibility and inheritance. But I can tell you guys that today. Um, Responsibility, if you want inheritance to succeed, and you need steps and a system to do that. And adding on to your values, everybody needs a sense of responsibility. If you don't have a sense of responsibility, you cannot do anything right. No matter if it's something as simple as your homework or something as big as inheriting a family recipe, right? Or the culture, or inheriting your culture onto your children, right? So number one is that we need to feel that we need to have a social responsibility, a personal responsibility and mission to our values. Okay, so that's why the most basic is responsibility, right? If we feel that we don't have this responsibility, then we cannot have concern for the society, and we can't say that we have concern for inheritance as well. So responsibility is crucial. Let's say that your parents or one of your elders has a business or industry that they want to pass down to you. It could be something like a small hole in the wall hawker restaurant, or something as big as an actual restaurant, right? Something as a product, right? Or like a family recipe that they want to inherit down. And they choose you as the heir. They choose you as the person that is going to be inherited to continue this business, right? Right. They choose to continue the recipe or things like that. If we choose, so number one is that we choose to inherit it, and that's good. Number two, what if we feel like we don't have this responsibility? We don't want to take responsibility, and we don't have this responsibility trait, and we are not responsible. Then we will not care about it, right? We won't care about it. We won't put our heart into it. And what happens next? Well, the business or industry is going to die because we are going to for sure give up on it, right? Give up on it, and the line of succession will end there. Okay. And there's examples of that. Unfortunately, the one example that I can think off the top of my head, for example, is in Europe they have ways of making their own gelato, which is kind of like ice cream, right? And it's been made for hundreds and hundreds of years until now, because the grandsons and the granddaughters, the grandchildren, are the last one to know how to make it, and they choose that they are not going to pass this on. They don't feel a social responsible to their culture or even their family, right? That's very upsetting. So that line, unfortunately, is going to end there, and this year, this decade, until if they choose to keep doing it or not, right? even if you try to inherit something, you might change some stuff and try to almost like cheat, but I don't want to say cheat because sometimes it's not cheating on it. And that defeats the whole purpose of inheritance. So no responsibility equals no inheritance, right? And I can give you guys an example right now, right? So I come from China, and then the one example is the very famous hot sauce that you can even find plentiful in the U.S. It's called Lao Gan Ma. Okay, and so the recipe has stuck around for I think hundreds of years, near a bit more than 100 years now. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. And that the flavor has definitely changed. And the short answer is because the ingredients, the recipe did not change. However, the current person who is in charge of inheriting as CEO chose to alter the recipe to get a new pepper that's a cheaper pepper because perhaps the economy has gone bad. Perhaps the current model, the business model with the original recipe is not sustainable. Or they just want more profits, right? Value profits over valuing the inheritance, right? So you're skipping on the quality for the cost. That is what's happening here. And that is an example. And how sad is that no one can taste the original um, hot oil or hot sauce anymore, right? So just let that sink that into your head for a moment, right? Like I used to be very good, and then 10 years ago they bought a new pepper because it's cheaper to buy. It was cheaper, and so perhaps they don't feel like they have that sort of responsibility to continue the original product. Okay. And I'm gonna say another example, right? So the Laokama example is where they determined to keep it going, and then even when the economy changes, it will change the product. And in my view, in my opinion at least, that defeats the purpose of inheritance, right? Example number 2 is McDonald's. McDonald's signature burger, if you remember that from a few years ago, right? They had never frozen burgers and they were very deluxe. They made things in it, right? Guacamole and, bacon and mushrooms and onions, things like that, right? However, the economy dipped and the price of beef went up, right? And I remember my dad told me that if you want to eat this, then you better eat it now because it's not going to last around for long, right? I didn't really believe that because I thought, what could go wrong? It's just a burger, right? But I was very naive back then, and really, it didn't last for long. You can't find it anymore now, right? But that means that McDonald's has responsibility. How? Because McDonald's will not destroy their burger to buy cheaper meats, even if it's for sake of profits or the economy, right? They're not gonna sell you a signature burger that they promise is good, but instead it did not turn out to be so good. Okay. Um. So inheritance. What have we learned? Inheritance is not only a product, but also it's an inheritance of responsibility, and responsibility is an inheritance. If we don't take notice of that, then we might break the product or whatever we're inheriting, break the culture, and it's going to ruin the purpose of inheritance. It's going to ruin the purpose of culture and the art of it, right? So responsibility is like an insurance for the inheritance. It's like a protection to ensure the good quality stays, right? It's the most basic asset of inheritance, right? If we lose the most basic asset, then the inheritance and that will disappear. And if we don't have the inheritance anymore, we are going to reinvent the wheel. That is going to keep costs skyrocketing, right? So if we become a responsible person, the most basic component is inheritance. For example, we have IPs, right? That is how things like McDonald's and KFC can still keep going because they have the IPs, the intellectual properties, right? They have, the food might seem bad, but they're a great example of responsibility, how they can keep it going and keep the IPs going. And that is a prime example of the benefits and why responsibility is so crucial when it comes to deciding to inherit something. Thank you. See you guys tomorrow.